Okay, thank you so much for coming on the podcast, Greg. I appreciate it. We've gotten to know each other through Lacey and all the amazing things happening there. You're my assigned EIR, so my pearls of wisdom that are coming out, they're coming through you as a vessel. So why don't you go ahead and just, share a little bit about your background and how you kind of like got into entrepreneurship, how you got into this space.
Yeah, so I like to joke that entrepreneurship is in my DNA. My grandmother had me selling tamales in front of supermarkets at like 6, 7 years old with her, and that really taught me the concept of like, okay, like we go to the supermarket, we put these ingredients together, whip up a tamale, and now we have a product to sell.
Mm.
So like that kind of energy saw me all the way through high school with throwing parties, charging people to get in, helping my mom run her hair salon. Yeah, I launched my first tech company about 15 years ago that outgrew me, continues to grow. I didn't give up any equity, and since then I've had the blessing of being able to bring founders value. Um, Whether it's through my venture scout role with the Venture City or helping sustainable clean tech companies at the LA Cleantech Incubator through Lacey.
Yeah, that's amazing. Tamales. Wow. What about kind of like skills wise? What do you feel like is like your strong suit? What do you specialize in?
So for me, it's marketing and like the energy of I need to get in front of my customer to speak to them. So growing up, my mom had hair salons throughout LA, and the consistent work she would give my friends and I was flyering neighborhoods. But she would make sure that we all had nice cuts or cleaned up our necks before we'd go out there and fly our neighborhoods. So that taught me the importance of physically getting in front of my customer, which has been really effective with any type of business I help launch or create. Like, we need to get in front of our customer. We need to understand what their pain points are, and they need to see that we're here, which is why most of my businesses I built being outside at places like trade shows.
And today, what do you think is like if someone's out there trying to get in front of their customer, where do they go? What do they like? Let's confine it to, let's say, CPG. We got probably got a good amount of like CPG listeners, I guess. What should they be thinking about in terms of getting in front of customers uh for a deal? Like what's a good deal on marketing right now?
Well, I'm a fan of telling your story. So like I know that if I go to your website, I'm gonna be able to buy your product. And like our feeds are full of that. And platforms like Temu have done a great job at flooding our feed with like, go buy this $4 product, go buy this $3 product. And like I can't compete with that. So my responsibility is to tell the story of my brand and then make my customer feel like they're a part of a community, which they are, right? So by me purchasing Hamilton Perkins, like not only am I being provided with something I need, but I'm now a part of a sustainable community that cares about where my products come from. So I think it's like doubling down on your storytelling, and to me, that'll translate into sales. And
Yep.
what's cool is like social media is free. So I have founders that I'm working with that are like, isn't my network built out? And I'm like, are you sharing content on LinkedIn? And then I have founders that will see the light and they'll just double down on a platform like LinkedIn, knowing that their customers are there and they see the connection starting to happen.
Yeah, it's fantastic. And story, I feel like, especially from like our standpoint, it's the number one like kind of like cheat code if there is one. Like we can fill up any pipe with our story, and that's really like what customers are looking for. But I'm wondering like, what do you tell somebody that's trying to get better at storytelling, or like should they be going and looking at that Donald Miller framework, the story brand? Like how does one kind of like practice and perfect storytelling in a way that's actually allowing them to get better at telling a story, allowing them to get like sales, and at the same time not like hurting the brand reputation because maybe they're telling a story in a kind of like off way that might be like maybe repelling a customer or something like that.
Mhm. Well, I'm a fan of utilizing your customers to help tell your story. So especially in the age of like us selling product to people, like people want to create content for brands they support. And so I'm a fan of leveraging that user generated content, and I need that user to be my customer. So if I'm lacking like a story to tell, like for me, a hack is reaching out to people I've already done business with and having them share their story with me on how they use my product, like what inspired them to purchase my product, what feeling does my product give them, right? So like when somebody puts on a milkroom hat, like how's it make them feel? Like I need to know that. My assumption is like, oh, they feel great, right? But like if I'm out there asking people like how it makes you feel, like friends are like, oh, it makes me feel like I belong to a community. And
Yeah.
so to me, that's an important message to share, right? So leveraging your existing customer base to help tell your story, and then allowing your leads to become a part of your story. So people want to be a part of people's story. And so as a brand, if I give you a potential lead the opportunity to be a part of a story with us, it's probably more likely that you're going to do business with us as opposed to like, oh, let's just conduct this transaction and wipe our hands. No, let's create a story around our transaction. Like what motivates you to buy this product? Why are you shopping with us? Like, how are you going to use it? How does it make you feel? And then that piece of content, once they get their delivery or like once I share it, like they are more than likely to reshare it with their community. So it gives me like that organic cosign.
Yeah, that's perfect. And maybe talk about Milkroom a little bit. Like I've come to know it as a community for the culture, and you kind of touch on the key sort of components, music, fashion, art, but maybe you can kind of just, for listeners that don't know, just tell them what the Milkroom is.
Yeah, so it's a project that my business partner and I launched during COVID under the premise of, well, I asked one of my mentors, Sally, like, what's the hardest type of business to scale during a pandemic? And she's like, a retail store. So being somebody that understands lean business models, like I understand the concept of like starting and scaling businesses. So I was like, let me apply what I've learned in the startup world into a brick and mortar business. And so out the gate, the attitude was like, who do we serve? And we realized that the creative here in Los Angeles is such an underserved market because creatives pop up every day. Every day, brands are born and brands die in a city like this. And so, what they continuously need is like access to distribution and a community that can help them create content. And so we've been able to leverage that. We scaled to 3 locations at one point. That was fun, but a lot of work. So we brought it back down to Woodland Hills and we built out a recording studio in the back. We've got fashion shows that happen on a regular basis. So we're like that cultural hub in Los Angeles where you're more likely to come across like a really cool fashion designer that's got 100 followers on Instagram. And to
Hmm.
me, like that's the ultimate flex is like catching that creative on their way up and being a part of their story, which is happening daily at Milkroom.
Yeah, that's fantastic. How did you like build out your team, or like how did you meet your partner? Like how did you all kind of divide the work up and find other people that could come in and help you build it so that, it's not like you building it?
hmm So one thing I'm a fan of is putting together an organization chart. And so at first, the organization chart was just my business partner and I. And from there, we can delegate tasks to each other, right? Where he's my CEO. So he tells me when I need to show up. He lets me know how we're doing numbers wise. Like that's his strength. And actually, I don't want to be a CEO. How about that? Like, I want to show up. I want to create. I want to help scale. Like day to day. Like I'm gonna let my business partner handle that. So what I do is I identify people and then I play to their strengths. And some people don't even know what their strengths are until we put them in that role, which is really cool when somebody blossoms within our organization. So I would be a fan of like going where your ideal employee is, So for me, I was working on a college campus prior to Milk Room, so that I had access to a lot of university students that were very optimistic and eager for life. So for me to partner up with a jaded 40-something-year-old like me, like wouldn't work. I need like that free spirit that like, you know what? Yeah, we can climb that summit. And meanwhile, in my head, I'm like, all right, cool, I don't know how we're gonna do this, but I'm just gonna do it one step at a time. And so finding people that play to our strengths and then helping people level up within our organizations, I feel is like our responsibility as leaders. So it comes down to like that first intern and managing that first intern well and showing them that we're a stepping stone in their career.
Yep. No, that's fantastic. And what about kind of like, I guess, Lacey, like great organization, crazy, like all the connections and startups and innovation. What what do you say to companies coming in or companies that are kind of like in it now to get the best value out of what Lacey does and to kind of really unlock those those relationships, those that mentorship, the funding? What type of things should companies be focused on to kind of like get to those next levels?
Mm-hmm. So I'm a part of our technical review committee. So me and my colleagues see all the applications that come in. So we get hundreds of applications for our programs, and only a handful of founders are selected. For me, a founder coming into any Lacey program, the advice I would give them is leveraging our existing community. So there are founders that have gone through what you're going through right now 3 years ago, 2 years ago, last cohort. And like those relationships could develop into business partnerships, into relationships, into leverage. So for me, it would be leveraging the Lacey community. And what does that mean? Is that just means like I can reach out to a founder and ask him what his experience with Lacey was like. And that's our first point of contact. And from there I could discover like, so what are you guys working on right now? Here's what I'm working on. All right, cool. Like we're on each other's radar. So to me, it's that leveraging the Lacey portfolio companies, because what happens is, especially when it comes time to raise capital, investors are more likely to invest in you if somebody referred you to them. So if I was going into the Lacey program, especially incubation, I would identify like of our portfolio companies, like in the last 12 months, who's closed a round and with who. So
Mm,
if I ever come across that founder, like there's an opportunity for an introduction if my product makes sense in that VC's portfolio. But if it doesn't make sense, if he's already got something like me in their portfolio, like if anything, I'm going to give the founder kudos.
that's real solid. And what are you most proud of? And it could be either business or marketing.
It's going to be choosing to live life by design. So default is really easy. And me at default is like continuously worrying about things that haven't happened yet.
Mm,
But choosing to live by design is like I really get to soak in my day. So like today has been on like this meeting has been on my calendar for like what, 6 months, 5 months.
yeah.
So like choosing to live by design is like, okay, what does my life look like 5 months from now? And like, is it on my calendar? Is it gonna happen? Before we jumped on this call and you were like, how was your morning? My hands were full of paint. Like I was outside playing with fabrics, playing with paint, like choosing to live life by design. And it's like, for me, helping me do that, it's like living out of my calendar and like continuously being in that state of like being grateful for where I'm at today. Because where we're at today, us 3 summers ago would have been like, you're crazy. So just, holding that space for the gratitude on like our journey, how far we've taken our businesses from the moment we were like, oh, let's register this domain name and see if this works.
Yeah, that's great. What are you doing for like learning and whatnot? Are you do you read or do you have podcasts you follow or where do you what are some good like inputs for you?
So I'm a sucker for podcasts like All In. Um, Access to knowledge is so available to us. So for me, like Audible, is a constant app that's going in the background. And right now, I'm listening to this book called The Mom Test, which is an awesome book that teaches people how to ask their customers the right questions to help solve their problems. Prior to that, I dove into blue ocean strategies. It's really refreshing as a business when we're like, okay, I have a lot of people doing the things that I'm doing within a certain space. Like, how do I create an uncontested blue ocean for myself and my business? So, like in the case of Milk Room, one of them was building out a music studio. So you don't come across a lot of retail stores that have a music studio in the back, and that's not even their primary business model, right? So like right now, our music studio is invitation only. And so we've cherry picked a few friends of ours that have been there since day one that make music, and we're like, here, come create back here. And so what's cool is like the organic content, the friends that end up showing up that shop, like it creates a blue ocean for us.
Yeah, I
So
love
leveraging podcasts and platforms like Audible.
it. Amazing. Where can people follow you and, you know, check in and, you know, get connected to you?
LinkedIn. It's Greg Monterrosa. Connect with me on LinkedIn, and my favorite founder to talk to is that founder that feels like they've plateaued, or that person that's like, I have an idea and I'm stuck. So if that sounds like you, feel free to tap in with me. I'd be more than happy to spend 15 minutes with you and see how we can get the ball rolling for you and your business.
Perfect. I'll leave that in the show notes. Thanks for doing this, Greg.
Of course.